Big stuff.
More excitement in the community today than I've seen since the Taken King launched. All right, so this week in Destiny, Bungie's weekly update renamed. First of all, they kind of reiterated that there'd be something new coming in spring. That would be a PvE-focused expansion of sorts. And there would be a light level increase. There would be new gear to collect. And there would be more stuff to play for PvE players. And they mentioned replayability, which I found interesting wording just based on that's a lot of the wording they were using for Prison Elders as well. They also mentioned that there'd be another expansion coming later in the year, which I think it caught me off guard. Pope called it last week, but I was really excited to hear that. And then the rumor that Destiny 2 got delayed till 2017 was confirmed by Bungie. This is the first time we've heard any comment out of Bungie about Destiny 2, and they called it a sequel. I think it's really exciting to know that we're going to get a light level increase, new PvE content, and new weapons, like new vendor gear, all that stuff in the spring. I don't know if we'll get a new raid. I don't know if we'll get a Prison of Elders style content update, that replayability term, but I am super excited to see new PvE content coming soon, and then getting it again later in the year.
I don't necessarily think that the replayability is them coming back to like Prison Elders or them hearkening to that. I think it's more of a response to what the community is saying, that the PvE right now is stale because there's no replayability that makes sense to do. Like, strikes have no purpose to keep on playing them and so on and so forth right now. So I almost feel like this content drop is going to be some new PvE experiences, but a lot of older PvE repackaged with new things that are with it, like, you know, rotating modifiers or something like that. And then also having potentially the drops be better. I hope that they like come back and say, guys, you're right, these drops are bad. Let's actually give you some more stuff and more things to go for. A whole new set of, you know, like Vanguard gear, Crucible gear, that's going to be interesting to grab. And hopefully not just 1,000-yard stare model that we were all crowing for, you know?
I'm actually getting ready to order like one of those giant confetti cannon things, and I'm just gonna have it sitting next to my desk here. So when I finally
ready to go when you get that
1,000-yard stare, I'm just gonna just pop in, just confetti rains down everywhere. Hopefully it'll be on
like
stream.
God Bless
if not,
America
it'll be a
start
very
playing in the
lonely
background.
moment.
Leif just messaged me. He's ready.
A lot of the tricky work that goes into game mode design to make the VFX or objectives look like they don't blend into the environment, you have to make them kind of stupid looking. The designers are always like, make it more arcadey, make it like look Pac-Man stuff just dropped in the middle of the levels, and the artists are like, dude, this looks horrible compared to like all this gorgeous environments around it. Hitting that sweet spot where something looks important, but obviously like not just another super or not something that blends with the environment is like a really hard balance.
Absolutely. That's also a really good thing. Like when the Spark Runner has it a great job of how the spark doesn't look out of place in the game. It looks intentional in the game world.
So I wanted to get into the discussion of Crimson, the Crimson Doubles game mode a little bit. How did you guys decide on the elimination game type being used for this event? Because previously we've had, skirmish. We've had skirmish.
You really kind of have to think about the high-level constraints first. Like, I like building the box that I need to work in before I start overthinking like what I want to put in the box. The scope was a major constraint. We really had to be careful that we didn't just go overboard and have something that would make a better fit for something that justified like full gear sets and being put on a more major release. The constraint right off the bat was, hey, this is like a Valentine's Day thing, and that means that players are pretty much going to play it once a year. The reason I tilted more towards like elimination, skirmish is deceptively snowbally. You get two guys, they lose a team fight. The team that wins the fight now controls the center, gets special ammo, and there's a decent chance that the team that's respawning gets basically put in bad position. They have to like unintuitively regroup, reposition themselves, and then actually get back into a fight. And that might not be as noticeable. As far as accessibility, that might not be as noticeable to low-skill players that they're losing because they're basically getting split up. Elim, on the surface, seems less accessible because it has the flavor of a more hardcore game type, but having fresh starts, quick goes, like, you win the team fight, that pretty much cleans the round out, I felt actually was close to the mark of like correct. The twist that I wanted to put on it was basically a rubber band. That way, if you're playing this mode that feels really hardcore, the rubber band puts you back in it and makes the 2v1 more interesting than it currently is in Elim. That'll make casuals feel, if they're first to die, that they're not leaving their teammate frustrated. And on top of that, the 1v2 is interesting even if you lose it. The two-person team still has an advantage because we don't want to trivialize the fact that they did get a kill, but there's just a more interesting dance. But I didn't know what the buff was, and that was just a whole other set of iteration trying to figure out what the right buff was. And I was really happy that the buff felt like you had to be clever with it and set up your stuff to basically 2v1 correctly, and that if you're playing too loose, that you just run into team shot and die. If you use it for baiting, if you use it for really careful revive play, if you use it to basically drag somebody out into 1v1 so you can use it to your advantage, it should feel like there's some sort of skill curve to using the buff correctly. And that's been my happiest thing, is that casuals think it feels cool and high skill players feel like, that they can't just use it in a sloppy way. You have to be thoughtful how you use the buff. Like, I was hoping it would be a little bit more pizza and beer than it is. Like,
right.
That would be nice.
For some players, it's true. But I'm also hearing that they're having lots of fun, even though it's like more competitive than expected. It's within the striking distance, but not quite what I was hoping. Not quite right bullseye.
Do you think level advantages being disabled for this particular mode could probably have lent to that a little bit?
Level advantages comes with other baggage for this particular experience. It's a little bit intimidating for mixed skill parties. I mean, the note that walked away from is that there's year one gear that we just, need to keep an eye on for just general balancing. Like our balance packs aren't restricted to year two. We're targeting April for some changes, but that list hasn't finalized. Level advantage to me says like, bring your best stuff, where I was hoping people were like, oh, I'm going to goof off and freaking you bring my old universal remote and my freaking necrochasm.
And there's a lot of factors, so many factors. I honestly feel for you devs. There's so many things that you have to consider.
Huge amount.
You got when you're considering how the pace of the game. One of the things that is promoting people to do exactly that, the suiciding to get the loot, is the fact that these games, because of just general map design, how big they are, people playing it. For example, I had a match on Pantheon that took I think it was 16 minutes total. And to play 16 minutes and not get a drop, I can understand someone getting frustrated and then just wanting to suicide to kind of speed up that process. So I know there's just so many things you guys have to consider to get that sweet spot, what you want.
No, absolutely.
Some of the feedback that I was receiving is that it's the more casual players who are getting paired up against casual people who are enjoying it, and rightfully so, and having a little bit more of a fun time. But it's on the higher end of the skill bracket that you see so little weapon diversity. You see, and even subclass diversity. The teams that are going full tryhard to the max, you're going to see double Sunsinger with Thorn, and people exploiting ways of getting special ammo in round one, and that kind of saps the fun out of it and makes you feel like you're playing in something that's supposed to have a laid back, light atmosphere. It makes it feel like you're in a highly competitive atmosphere where you can't relax. And I know, because it's skill-based matchmaking, that if I derp around, I'm gonna lose. And frankly, I don't like to lose. I mean, I'm not all about winning, but no one enjoys getting their butt handed to them. So of course, I'm forced to go with my best stuff.
Yeah. It's a pretty classic design problem. I'm in the boat. Like, I was playing with Triple Rec, last night, and like anytime we had a tough match, I'm like, man, I should put on my business suit. Like, why am I goofing off with like these other guns, even when there's no incentive?
So how do you promote weapon diversity? That's the question. How do you promote that? Do you do it with bounties? We have seen that you can do some creative things with these playlists, though.
You got to hit those balance patches, man. You got to break up that meta. You got to keep things fresh. Right. You got to find a way to make people feel comfortable using more of their gear. There's no group of gear in Destiny that we've pointed at and said, we're not supporting that gear. As far as we're concerned, like, there's a wide pool of stuff, and that players shouldn't feel like they're cheating on their Mida when they use their, Suros.
With the current state of skill-based matchmaking, do you feel like there's a lot of room for adjustment or improvement on it for how, like high skill players go into doubles? If you have two high skill players going there, it is sweat after sweat after sweat after sweat. It's like you got to have your tryhard pants on tight. Can you adjust it per playlist? With the skill based matchmaking, because like it'd be nice to have maybe a tryhard game and then, I don't know, 3 or 4 beers and pizza games. In order for high skill players to have like a 60-40, the majority of the time they have to get matched up against high skill players, because that 40% of the time they're going to get knocked down by people of that skill.
You could argue in Call of Duty, there's rubber band mechanics and investment systems that make low skill players less sensitive to the fact that they have a sub 50% win rate, that they basically have other objectives. You get grenades on respawn. If you have a long life because you're having a good life, you get less grenades. There's more room for high skill players to be match made with low skill players in a way that doesn't make the low skill players feel like they're being smothered, but that compromises a lot of the core gameplay, and it's a hard balancing act. Like death streaks, I was one of the big advocates for cutting death streaks out of COD, and like a lot of the argument was we need rubber banding specifically as a backstop to when we mix high skill with low skill. In Destiny, I don't feel that like there's room, or even it would be that good to basically litter the game with a lot of rubber band mechanics. Like, you get supers if you're struggling. You get only special
rubber banding is.
Rubber banding is the opposite of snowballing. It's basically like if a team is struggling, the game has mechanics to put money in their pocket to help get them back in. What is a high skill player's pizza and beer playlist, because he's being match made with lower skill players, for that low skill player, because of the 40% win rate, he's having a sweatier time than anything that high skill players ever experience, because high skill players have never been put in a situation where they're losing most of their engagements or
Right.
That is a really philosophical question. I had not actually, I've been on this end of the line just bitching about it, to be honest with you. And it's a very comfortable place to be, because ignorance is it's just this really,
is bliss.
It's this beautiful place where I just sit here and, point fingers and stuff, and it's great.
When we're looking at party game modes, it's like that sense is really important. It has to have just a little bit enough of it legs where you feel it's not a total sideshow and superficial and anyone can have fun, but like you're going to get bored of it in 2 weeks, which is really easy to do. Can also be the reverse, where you find yourself taking it seriously every time you play it, and by the time you've played it 5 times in a row, you feel like you can only play it seriously. Great party game mode, it just has to find that notch. And it does. It finds like a pretty good place in the ecosystem where everyone knows you can go there for a good time and like a cool down. It's the thing that you play at the end of a night when you've spent all your sweat.
See, here's the thing though. Right now, as somebody who gets matched up against a lot of people that want to try hard, I don't feel like I have a party playlist unless it's Mayhem. Now, this is going to be a hot topic, and I don't mean to drop this on you right now.
But you're going to.
I'm going anyway.
Do you think if we had custom matches, so people who were high skilled that could continue to match up against other high skilled players in the community that want to do that, would weed out a lot of that every time I go in the Crucible I can't relax type of thing for somebody who wants to?
Or a ranked playlist. I mean, like a legitimate...
I didn't even say that.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I'll give you a complex answer.
Love it. I'm down for
definitely more yes than no. I love private matches, custom games, all sorts of deceptive challenges way finding its way into the game one day, or it's struggling to be this thing that we can deliver in the short term. There's all sorts of realities behind it, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like what it actually does for the ecosystem. Right. I could argue very easily, playing devil's advocate more so than I have most times in my life because I really believe in the thing. Private matches, because they're very hard to integrate into the investment game, and because they have a high social friction because you have to arrange it yourself, there's basically a barrier of entry that it doesn't scratch the itch for as many players as you'd think, because even players that are interested in like going hard are in love with the convenience of the match-made playlists. Like Resistance to the Fireteam only playtest, I think, illustrate how much more difficult it would be to make private matches a really important cornerstone of the Crucible play and what you do in an average session. But that's all devil's advocate. A lot of that stuff's an open question of what it would actually do for the game. Like, we could believe in those features and still not be entirely confident that that's exactly the issue it addressed.
I appreciate the answer on it. So what I've seen on Twitch and how the community has taken, I'm sure you're aware of, like, people going to classic playlists and trying to match up against each other. It seems like there's so many steps that the community has taken to try to enable this ability to just play against the people that they want to play against, as opposed to going in publicly or into public matches. And I get that, like, it's a much smaller percentage. I totally get that. But at the same time, that percentage is a lot more viewed in terms of YouTube and Twitch, you know?
I'm not going to devalue that for a split second. And like, I mean, I'll go a step further. This is what I was talking to Triple Rec last night about, that on one hand, it's really inspiring that we've got a community that is engaged enough and just outright cool enough that they're willing to go the extra mile to like get the experience they want out of the game. Mm-hmm. But as a designer, not even a game designer, just as like a person that that does design for a living, something that inconvenient, it's like painful when people have to like do massively inconvenient things to make the machine do the thing they want to do. Like the expensiveness, the priorities, the design work. There's so many barriers, like, and obstacles to do that, to solve that problem. But
I would completely agree that most players probably wouldn't even use this. But I would argue that even the players who didn't use it would see the benefits from it, just from seeing competitive play, easily played, like seeing tournaments on Twitch. Or
I'm with you. It's just, the games. It's a big space, and it's like, you'd be surprised the number of things that like seem easy and then there are things that are like deceptively hard. I don't know anyone, or I haven't met anyone recently at Bungie that's like, I don't understand why people are asking for that. It's just not a belief. Like people get it. Yeah, no one devalues the Twitch streamers or the spectator experience or the YouTube experience or being able to walk around a map that just came out. And there's a lot of little cases like that it covers. If you come up with a list of everything the game needs right now and what could be the potential bottlenecks as far as engineering or UI or audio. It's tough, man.
Yeah, for sure. Picking your brain and seeing what you like and what you value is really important for us because it helps us to understand what we may be getting in the future or the direction that Bungie's going with playlists in general. I think that the idea behind PvP right now is that it's content that we can access and play with our friends while there's a lack of content, right? And so there's a lot of interest and focus on PvP. So there's a lot of really good questions and ideas being floated around on the community.
It's just tough because like PvP, it might be one very specific piece of tech that we need to do that, and then immediately that's like, well, now we need to like make it bigger if we're going to be associating tech with it. It's like there's a specific scope for the mode that's associated with. Like you can't have this mismatch where like it's really easy for the designers to make a pretty decently sized experience, but it comes with a huge engineering cost along with it, and you're like, man, if we're spending that, we might as well go bigger. Like there's just always, the machine's always unpredictable in that sense.
It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things we saw with update 2.1.1 is the changes you guys made to special ammo. I was wondering, what was the thought process into changing that and seeing that come into Crimson Doubles? That's like everybody's first experience with the new special ammo changes. I was wondering what you guys felt about that, how it's been.
The primary versus primary encounters are really good, and some of the 3v3 game types felt like they were just a little bit too dependent on special weapons. And if you're dealing with hardscope snipers and shotgun rushers, just a certain quantity of the match, it feels like you're missing out on that primary versus primary. On top of that, trying to have more gameplay associated with CZ and special ammo crates and being like, well, we're going to rush those dudes because we know what special ammo they're camping is more interesting than just having it right off the bat. There's definitely pros and cons to it, but like special ammo in general is a really difficult mechanic, like on multiple levels to iterate on because it services so many different experiences and archetypes. It makes me sad that every time we iterate on it, we know that there's going to be some pain associated with it, but we really got to take it for a ride and see what it was about. And even if it was a leaky bucket with icebreaker and the sidearm, it's been fun, man. I've been enjoying it. I've been playing a lot, and knowing that they're not going to be hardscope sniping me at the start of the round one is cool.
No Land Beyond.
Well, I got to say that one of the things I really appreciate about the special ammo nerf is that it addresses the imbalance of special use to primary use without actually affecting how the special weapons behave and how they perform.
I feel like they're definitely on top of it right now. Special ammo is a common conversation around our desks. We're looking at it pretty aggressively.
You got a chance to work with the live team for this project, but you're not on it, right? You're not technically on the
for sure.
How was that put together? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but right before I answer your question, I just for the sake of the people that are asking probably PvE questions, Bungie's a 700-person company, and it's full of people that are like really, really good, really like shockingly good at the things that are on their plate. And it's pretty common for you to ask people, "Hey, man, like, what's going on with this aspect of the game?" And you're like, "Man, I've been into my stuff pretty deep. Like, I'm friends with those guys. Like, I hear things. even if I knew what I was talking about, that the information's changed, or I'm misrepresenting another professional's like position or their work, or because I don't have their skill set, I'm accidentally trivializing something that's really difficult. I have all the respect in the world for the raid designers. And raid designers tell me, like, this is what we can do along this period of time. There's not an inch in my body that's basically like, oh, I wonder if they just did this instead of that. I wonder if they could do that better or faster. I'm like, man, that is a black hole. It's an alternate universe to me. They're in that content. They're looking at that content 8 hours a day for years, trying to figure out how to make it better. The battle scars and the wounds you get from basically cut content, false starts, stuff that was working, right, that fell apart in your hands, like stuff that didn't play test well. But yeah, same thing with the live team. What's it like working with the live team? Like, they have to think about timeframes and windows, drills, and be nimble in ways that some of the other teams in the building just don't understand. Like, they have to deal with resource constraints and deliverables in ways that my team can spend years working on stuff. The live team, because their windows are so much smaller, like, they just have to be so much leaner and more careful and more risk averse. It's really easy for a live team to overplay their hand or to take on so much risk, and there's literally no time to react because they spent all their dollars basically like reaching, trying to get some, like, push their team beyond their limits, and they just don't have the time. Working with them at Crimson Days was really a pleasure because they believed in the vision, they respected the mode work, they believed in that core, and they really just made plays. The live team's really sophisticated, and they knew full well that Crimson Days was going to drop into a content route, and that it could be seen as, or perceived as a as a loss aversion, like, oh, you're giving me this at the expense of that, and that would put, like, a dark shadow on the experience. Anything comes out, like, even the slightest bit sketchy, they're their own worst critics. These other teams at Bungie just don't have those types of challenges. And particularly that the live team is on frontier ground. There's not a lot of live teams on console for major shooters. Like, they're inventing things. It's crazy.
I'm hoping that you probably can't confirm this, but time was clearly put into this, and maybe just like Sparrow Racing League, we could see it come back in a future update.
And I'm actually worried. People were like, dude, put it in the rotators. What are you doing? Like, I'm like, oh, God damn it. Not my call, though. Like, the live team, I think, ultimately will figure out, like, do we save it for a special thing, or do we, we just mix it up?
Turn the buff green, and it's St. Patrick's Day now. There you go.
That's right.
That's all you got to do. I'll give you that one for free.
Everybody shoots crooked.
The Crimson Days playlist, I felt, really ignited a part of me that really is thinking about what is possible in PvP to bring the community together and more engaged. And I kept thinking about other playlists like Gun Game and, Capture the Flag, and things that were fun type events, faction type wars, and things that would engage the community in different ways, not just have some big overall themed event like, the Valentine's Day where you put a lot of time and resources into decorating the tower, but let's say a faction war for a week, and something that maybe doesn't take as many resources but is more involves more of the community in access to more of the faction that you subscribes to's armor and guns during that time. I mean, they're just ideas like this that give us ways that we can connect with each other within PvP and make it fun and engaging. It doesn't always have to be a redesign of the play space.
Yeah, it's crazy. The possibility space, it's like one of the real pleasures of working on the IP. I'm with you, man. And like the lessons are being heard loud and clear. Emmy, the head of the live team, and Steve Cotton on competitive, like some of the best conversations we've had recently. What are we observing, and like what does it say to the opportunities that are on the table? There's no poverty of design that would make for like just really compelling experiences for the community. The bottleneck is what's right for the moment.
At the same time, though, couldn't it be something that if you guys build something that is a mainstay during the live team events, wouldn't it be great, though, that it did return and added more content to the base game?
We can. It's just, I'm thinking hypothetically, literally hypothetically. This isn't like a hint. My brain would be like, oh man, we should debut that in Iron Banner because that sounds like a good vehicle. And if we're gonna debut CTF in Iron Banner, we should we should think of like, what the gear set for that Iron Banner is going to be. But wait, what if we built an entire new CTF event? I'm like, well, what can we build around CTF that makes so much more sense than Iron Banner, that like it really justifies us making a thing out of it? Are we building an event for event's sake? Are we making noise where it's justified? And like often we look at that as players. Like elimination and trials were built with each other in mind and dovetailed in a really special way. On top of that, we have to think about our ecosystem when Iron Banner comes back. If things aren't time limited over the course of the franchise, you can get a lot of like crazy bloat. There's always something happen, but because of that, it's like over familiar and nothing, like it isn't special. So that's one of the challenges with SRL. A lot of the conversations are like, what's the right cadence? What's the right uptime? If people are playing this, what is that the expense of? How does that influence the investment game? Because if this is coming back aggressively, have players already learned that the experience is already associated with a certain degree of like rewards, and those rewards are gone? It's easier for Crimson doubles because hypothetically, if we just throw in a rotator or whatever, it's back. It's fun for that week. But other experiences like the event, the rewards, and the gameplay itself are built so much with each other in mind that like splitting them up can get really complicated.
Sure, they're complete packages, and what you're saying is taking parts of them and putting them into the game makes for an incoherent experience from the design perspective. The problem though, like SRL, I think a lot of people felt 3 weeks was too long for SRL, but I'd say there's a very strong feeling in the community that SRL is going to return at some point. And even though that you guys have said nothing about it returning, like zero from Bungie.
This is a classic example. Like, I actually don't know. I haven't asked. I'm sure if I asked them, they'd be like, we weren't in that meeting. You weren't on that email thread. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm guessing at some point, but like all those other questions are like super valid. I'd be shocked if they're like, we know exactly the right cadence for our community for that experience and the reward plan. I'm like certain that like there's at least one of those pieces. They're like, well, we need to figure out this other thing before we start thinking about that.
Either way, we as a community are ready for anything and everything.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I think the Destiny community is definitely passionate. I think that there are reasons for that, and I can't speak for everybody, but personally, yeah, I can point at things in the PvP experience that I wish were different. But and I know that you're not individually responsible for the PvP experience, but you're a part of it. So to you and to all the guys there, the reason that I'm passionate about it is because, quite frankly, Destiny, the PvP just plays so good. Like the mechanics.
Absolutely.
There's no shooter out there, to me, that feels as rewarding because of the amount of freedom you have with things like character movement and even things like combining various armor pieces to create a new playstyle. The games don't give you that kind of freedom. Not all games can do that, and you guys have accomplished something that's pretty incredible, so we want to see it perfected.
Absolutely, man. I'm going to hang out with my wife. I really, really liked having a chat with you guys. Maybe I'll come back soon. Maybe I'll drop another experience down the road, and we can have a chat about it.
Tell us when you're taking out damage over time in the Crucible. Oh, that'd be amazing, man. Really appreciate it.